One of the most admirable traits that I find within exceptional people is their ability to captivate a room and leave you with a lasting imprint of them in your brain. You walk out of the event that they were a part of, and you can't even really remember the majority of the time you spent there. But after letting the experiences of the event marinate for a little while, there's that moment that sticks out to you like a sore thumb. And that moment was created by that memorable person. In order to explain how this person became so unforgettable, let me take you back to an event that happened a few weeks ago that featured some of the most memorable people that I've ever met. It started with a DM on Twitter. I opened up my message request to see that Andrew Kirby, a self-help YouTuber turned YouTube consultant, had invited me to a creator retreat with some of the biggest people in the education space. There were some real heavy hitters on this list. Charlie Hupert from Charisma on Command, Chris Williamson from the Modern Wisdom podcast, Leon Hendricks, and several other multi-million-dollar entrepreneurs. Although I was nervous as to what value I could bring and potentially presenting in front of all of these successful dudes, I pushed through my doubts, bought a flight to LA, and attended the event. In this massive mansion, complete with a mini golf course, hot tub, and basketball court, there were loads of great moments and conversations shared between all of us. But out of all of those moments, there are only two that stand out the most in my mind. And I think they hold the key to understanding why some people are so memorable while others are treated as a ghost. Throughout the event, we had these group activities where we would either talk about a topic with all the members of the event or break up into smaller groups to dive deeper into more personal topics. For one of these smaller groups, I ended up getting paired with Rian, who works with a research collective that helps business leaders reach flow state more consistently, and Charlie, who I mentioned earlier from the YouTube channel Charisma on Command. Now, keep in mind, this was the first day of the trip, so we were still kind of getting comfortable with each other, so the organizers of the event thought that the best exercise we could do is to split up into groups of 3 and ask one person in that group a few questions about themselves. I went through the answers that would most accurately describe what I was asked, but to be honest, I can't even really remember most of what I said. But when it came to what Charlie told us, I remembered almost every single word. Rian had saw something online about Charlie getting into the realm of psychedelic therapy and wanted to know more about it, so he asked him what the most intense experience he ever had on psychedelics was. And what Charlie explained was something that you probably couldn't pay me $100,000 to do. He wanted to create a deeper connection with his family and resolve some of the issues they've had in the past, and so he had them all take a dosage of MDMA, otherwise known as ecstasy, together in a safe setting. He told us in detail how they were all crying together, confessing that in certain moments they felt unloved or abandoned, and above all, that they knew they wanted to start showing up for each other more intentionally in their day-to-day lives. And I remember he ended off that story by saying that, and I quote, "This was the only experience I had in my life where afterwards I said to myself, okay, this is all that I needed. I can die now." Listening to his story evoked emotions of fear, awe, and resonance within me. I could only imagine how intense it is to do MDMA, let alone with your whole family, whom almost everybody has suppressed secrets and quarrels with that they wish they could communicate to them. The size and the significance of the event, paired with just how impactful that story was and how Charlie delivered it, makes me think that I may never forget that story for as long as I live. And after reflecting on that brief moment of the trip, it revealed to me the first way that someone can become more memorable and impactful when they converse with people. Charlie produced strong emotions within me and tied them to an interesting story. You see, we all have these different memory systems in our brain based on what that memory will be used for. There's our short-term memory, which is our immediate memory for simple tasks like decision making, our working memory, which is for information that is more complex and demanding, and the memory that is most important for this video is our episodic or long-term memory. In order for something to get stored in our long-term memory for potentially years, it needs to have released some sort of brain chemicals or hormones that signify the event's importance to the brain. This is why you probably can't remember what you had for breakfast 2 days ago, but you can still remember that time you got injured on the playground when you were 6 years old and the girl you had a crush on made fun of you. One event was a monotonous, everyday task that didn't produce a significant emotional reaction within you, while the other one had you experiencing emotions of regret, embarrassment, and even releasing some oxytocin and dopamine from seeing that girl you like. It's also why all the greatest marketers and creators on the planet know that in order to really become a memorable product or brand, you have to attach a story to that brand that makes it impossible for the potential customer or audience member to forget you. And now you understand why in my videos, I'm constantly telling you guys stories instead of just giving you facts that you'll probably think are influencing you more than the stories that I tell, but really you'll just forget them 2 days later because they won't be tied to any of your emotions. The bottom line is most people are not logical creatures. You may really have the best reasoning as to why you should have better relationships, a better job, and why you're a really great person who deserves to be memorable, but that doesn't mean anything if you can't induce excitement, happiness, wonder, anger, or sadness within others. We function on emotions first, then justify through logic second. People seldom remember you for what you did. They remember you for how you made them feel. And if they claim that they remember you for what you did, it's because what you did made them feel something. So if you want to become a more memorable and influential person, the most important question you need to ask yourself is, how can I make this person or these people feel something? And ideally make them feel something positive. In this way, you don't even have to be a super charismatic person. You just need to be able to say the right things at the right time in order to leave a lasting impact. And if you need more help figuring out what emotions make people strongly feel something, I've left a list of adjectives in the description that you can play around with. The amazing part about this process is that through telling stories that push and pull at the human emotional spectrum, you will naturally attract the people you would with more. I'm sure a decent amount of people, after hearing Charlie's story about MDMA, would say to themselves, this guy's a little too far out there for me. I don't know if I really want to hang out with him. But that's the point. That means that even if Charlie didn't tell that story when first meeting those types of people, they probably wouldn't have gotten along very well anyway because their interests don't align. The right type of people that would be the best ones to create relationships with will see a part of themselves they are afraid to express through your emotional storytelling, and they'll want to express that part of them more, which makes that type of person never want to forget you. Look, I'm certainly not a memorable person to everyone, but I'm a memorable person to the right people because I connected with them on a deeper level and I made them see and feel an aspect of themselves. The people that I surrounded myself with at this event know that the right investments early in life can set you up for endless returns in the future. But now most Americans have blown through their pandemic savings because fast money doesn't last. And even if it did, maintaining that wealth is just as hard, if not harder, than earning it. Successful rich people use their wealth to branch out and invest in exclusive assets. Now, traditional investments, they've been up and down for the last few years, but commodities like fine art, for example, followed up a record-breaking season last fall by surpassing its pre-pandemic values as of April. Now, this is where you might be thinking, how can a regular person like me protect my wealth with a Picasso or Banksy painting? And that is where our friends at the sponsor of today's video, Masterworks, come in. Masterworks is a platform that allows everyday people to invest in multi-million-dollar paintings for just a fraction of the price of an entire piece. So instead of buying an entire painting, you can invest in one and receive your share of the potential net profits. So far, those profits have been pretty impressive. Masterworks has sold over $45 million worth of art and distributed the net returns to investors. I recently started investing with them, and since a lot of you guys have already started as well and they want to support our community, they've given us an exclusive link in the description. With it, you can skip the waiting list to join and start investing like the ultra wealthy people we were talking about earlier today. Just click the link in the description below. See important Regulation A disclosures at masterworks.com/CD. Now back to the video. Now obviously creating an emotional response out of people is easier said than done. Even if you know you have a memorable story about your life, or you want to influence the emotions of someone in a different way, it means nothing if you can't execute on the delivery of the message. And I think that next memorable moment in LA can teach you how to do that more effectively. At the end of the second night, just about everyone had shared at least one memorable moment with each other, so we all felt comfortable enough to strip down into our shorts and hop in the small jacuzzi that overflowed into the pool surrounding it. I'm sure that moment of bonding with a bunch of successful dudes in a hot tub produced some dopamine and serotonin within me in a non-sexual way. Or was it? But again, we talked about a bunch of different things, and again, I can't really remember most of what was said, except for the stories that Chris told. Chris has lived what he refers to as two separate lives. Before he started the now very successful Modern Wisdom podcast, he was a club promoter for many different nightclubs in England, and around that same time, he was nominated to be a contestant on the first season of UK's Love Island. So by all accounts, he's done and seen a lot of shit. Out of all the stories he mentioned, the one that I paid the most close attention to was when he was out in Las Vegas one night with a few of his employees. They were out to dinner and had planned to go to a very big rave in the heart of the Vegas Strip afterwards, so they thought it would make the night more interesting if they decided to take some magic mushrooms. And I swear a requirement for you to tell a good story doesn't have to start with a psychedelic trip. That's just a coincidence within this video. Anyways, they had already taken a bit during dinner, but they weren't really feeling the effects, so on the way over there, they decided to take some more. Bad idea. What they didn't realize was that the dinner had slowed down the effects of the mushrooms kicking in, and that they did not in fact have to take more shrooms. So once they got there, it all hit them like a truck going 70 miles per hour down a highway. They stayed up all night roaming the Vegas streets, laughing and bumping heads, and their excursion even led one of their intoxicated friends to get pressured into going into a memorabilia store to buy a $300 pair of drumsticks used by Aerosmith in one of their concerts. It was most definitely a memorable night. It's not difficult to understand why I wouldn't forget a story like this. It has some suspense created by the uncertainty of when the shrooms would kick in, and it has some comedy and laughter because you're thinking about a drunken high dude purchasing drumsticks at 3 in the morning. But I honestly think that what's just as important, if not more important, is how well Chris explained that story. One thing I've noticed about Chris, whether he is telling something or listening to something, is that his eyes always light up. They are really wide, like you can tell he really gives a shit about what he's hearing or what he's saying. He also makes a point to look at everyone he is talking to multiple times. After telling so many stories, he has a natural ability to go around giving each person's eyes in the audience attention, which is also crucial to making who you're surrounded by feel like you're really talking to them. And he can recall the events of funny, cool, and interesting things that have happened to him using really expressive language too. For example, instead of just saying, "We went to this club and then the shrooms started doing their thing. It was pretty crazy," he said something along the lines of, "We're thinking this is gonna be a piece of cake, you know? We had all taken this many shrooms before, so we were confident in our ability to maintain our cool." But then, right as we're all making our way to the dance floor, the people's faces started morphing into these different shapes, and we all collectively looked at each other and went, "Holy shit." That latter explanation is so much more descriptive, and it almost transports you to the event through the words that explain just how each person must have felt within that moment. So there's 2 lessons that we can take away from this. The first is that you need to genuinely give a shit about what you're talking about. Although it's not a requirement that you do really care about what you're saying, it will make those things that help the delivery of the message, like holding eye contact, speaking with enthusiasm, and using hand movements to emphasize what you're saying, come much more naturally. And the second thing that we can take away from Chris's storytelling is that it's fairly easy to become more memorable if you have more memories to share. Exploring novel things and intentionally putting yourself in more situations that make you laugh, cry, feel joy, or help you self-reflect will not only make you more open-minded, which increases your ability to connect with others, but it will also enhance your ability to improve the characteristics of yourself as well. As cliche as it sounds, I've found without doubt that in order to really find yourself in life, you first must lose yourself. You can learn all the different hacks to appear more confident and charismatic, but if you haven't truly lived a life full of memories, it's gonna come off as extremely ingenuine. So put yourself in more situations where a new experience will arise, and you will learn more about the world and yourself. And after that experience has concluded, write down a short 300-word summary of what happened. You could even dedicate an entire journal just to this practice alone, which will keep your memory sharp and improve your articulation skills. Because even if your life is filled with novelty, it's extremely difficult to put your memories into words and speak succinctly without a writing practice. For the last part of this video, I want to ask you a question that is more important than anything I've talked about so far, and it's why I left it till the end of the video, because I know that whoever is still watching this video really cares about this topic. Why do you want to be a memorable person in the first place? I ask this because many of you approach these common self-improvement issues coming from a state of intense lacking. You want to become memorable because then people will respect you and everybody will want your attention, and only then can you give yourself permission to love yourself. But if your entire pursuit of becoming a more memorable person is a ploy to try and overwhelm the undeniable truth that you really can't stand yourself right now, people are going to feel that through the way you try to come off as charismatic and memorable. I really dislike the idea of trying to force yourself into this personality that does not at all align with what you're naturally inclined to enjoy and be interested in, and there's a big difference between being someone you're not just for approval and improving upon the base stats of the personality you were born with. Instead of the awful advice of be yourself, which I've criticized in the past, the advice I'm trying to give you here is create a version of yourself that brings out the best qualities in you. To apply what you've learned here, you shouldn't be forcing yourself to be an extrovert, highly sociable, or be the most likable person you can. It's simply about enhancing who you already are so you can make a greater impact. Becoming more memorable is just a process of understanding how memories are stored in the brain and reverse engineering the process just as we did in this video. And by doing so, you are opening yourself up to an entirely new range of opportunities. Your positive influence will span years instead of minutes, and that's why we really want to become memorable. Not because we want more validation from others, but because we want to inspire others to change the world with us. Thank you to all my patrons on Patreon. This is where you can talk to me one-on-one over the phone, and if you want to check that out, the link is in the description. Now, none of this matters if you have social anxiety that you can't get over because you won't be able to express anything, right? So I've created a whole playlist of how to improve your social skills and all that type of stuff. Go check it out. Go watch these videos. It will really help you. And now I'm heading out. So I love you guys. Peace.